Hello and welcome to the channel, J.I. Colorist. My name is Jody and you are back today for our July installment of coloring the gemstones of the year. So each month we are choosing a different birthstone for that month. So we are in July 2024 and July's birthstone is a ruby. And a ruby is a very valuable gemstone, and I hope that you enjoy learning a little bit more about the ruby. I have already done a practice picture from the Gems Volume 2 adult coloring book by Cynthia Clouter. And so I just wanted to show you kind of where we're going with this. This is the ruby that I did. So a ruby is a faceted gemstone. And so you're going to be looking for something that has defined facets or edges. So that's when you're looking for pictures in your coloring book, you're not going to be looking for a round smooth stone. You're going to be looking for one that has jagged edges. So that's the first thing to note. I did use polychromos in this example, and I will tell you the colors that I used. I used dark cadmium yellow, and that's to kind of make it glow a little bit. So I'll just bring it up a little bit more. So it kind of has a few glowing highlights around the in the center of each facet, and also in the center, and then kind of beaming out a little bit. I then used pale geranium lake, deep red, and mid cadmium red, and those are all in the polychromos. So we will go ahead and recreate something similar to this, but I just thought it's kind of nice to start off the video with showing you a picture of what we're going for. And so the difference between a garnet and a ruby is definitely more red, and a garnet has more of a reddy orange tinge to it. So there can be quite a few different rubies, but the ruby is always definitely going to be red. Also using the Coloring Bliss practice reference sheet, I'm using this. This is for their alcohol markers simple gemstone practice sheet, but I use it just for the pictures on the page. So here is the garnet that we did way back in January, and then we did a diamond, and now I'm going to use this one up here, and I've already started a little bit. So if you notice, this one has a lot more red in it than this one. So that's even though there is a little bit of orange in here, that's because I mixed a bit of yellow in with the red, and I got kind of a orangey tinge to it. So we will continue on practicing with this, and then I am going to move on to grains of gold, and I have selected a page here, and I have selected this bee or beetle page, and it has a gemstone, two gemstones, or three actually. There's a square one here, but I'm going to do this larger gemstone here with you, and we'll get this part done, and then that will be it for today. On these, I'd like to keep the videos fairly concise, just to show you kind of how I am doing the gemstones. This is one way. There are many, of course, different ways to do gemstones. I will insert some pictures of gemstones in this video that I received off of the internet, both in the polished and the natural state, so that you can see how a ruby evolves, and also sprinkle in some facts about rubies. So if that's something of interest to you, then grab your practice sheet yourself, or even just a coloring book, and let's get started. So as I mentioned, a ruby is a faceted stone, so we are going to be coloring this. It also can be a crystal though, so if you did want to add some red crystals into your, if you have a page with a bunch of crystals, they are a crystal as well, so you could do them in that format. So I am pulling out my polychromos. These are the pencils that I use the most and I'm most familiar with. So this is the 120 polychromos color family chart done with Color with Claire, and I'm just bringing this out because you're going to want to select 3 to 4 colors of red, and you're going to want some light reds all the way to some really deep reds. So her family chart works quite well for that. and you can select kind of which red you're going for. If you're going for a pinky red over here, I like to stick with the actual more what I call true reds. So I have selected 3 from this section, and then I went and grabbed the darkest red from this one, just to give it a bit more. So the reds that I am going to be using today are Pale Geranium Lake 121, so that's this red here. Our next color is Deep Red 223. So I've skipped a red here and I'm going to a darker one. Then I go to our darkest red in this line, which is Middle Cadmium Red 217. And then just to get a really dark red, I've gone for the Dark Red 225 on this page, on this line. So those are my reds that I'm going to select. And then to get kind of a highlight, I also like to bring in a yellow. So I've got the Dark Cadmium Yellow, which is from this line here, and it is 108. So it's this grouping right here. Now you can select a lighter red. This is the yellow that's starting to turn orange, so that's why I selected it. But you can select any of the yellows that you choose, and that is an option. Rubies do tend to look sometimes like they have a glow, and that's why I selected a yellow. You could also select a white, but that I haven't had as much luck. So sometimes I'll use the white to do a little bit of blending, but for the most part I have not been using Gamsol or anything on like these areas here. I've just been blending with the actual pencils themselves. And as you can see, there is no white showing on the paper. This is a thicker paper, not cardstock, but definitely a smoother, thicker paper made for alcohol markers. Okay, let's get started, and we're going to just continue on with the facets so that you can kind of see where I'm going. For a light, you are going to kind of want to pick a light source. The light source is coming down straight, and so it's making a glow in the center of each of the facets. So if you also could have a light source that's, say, hitting here, so it would be a little bit lighter here, then get darker, and then maybe really dark on this end. So you just want to play with some light, and that's what pictures come in handy. So let me show you some pictures on screen. So the picture on screen right now is a single large ruby, and as you can see, the light is hitting it and refracting in a bunch of different ways, and there's a lot more facets than just the ones on here. So the more facets, the more kind of play with the light you can do, and that will come in handy when we're looking at this picture here. So this picture here has a lot more facets, so we'll be able to play with darker and then getting lighter as we go up. Okay, enough chit chat. Let's get started, and I'm going to start with my lightest pencil, and I'm just going, so that is going to be Pale Geranium Lake, and let's bring it down. And I'm going to, I already know that I want the darkest areas in the edges, so I don't actually need to include those areas, but I can go all the way up or all the way down. I'm just keeping light pressure, holding the pencil further back if that's something that you struggle with. And this is the next color, so this is Deep Red 223. I'm going to start top and fade downwards. So when a light hits a gemstone, it kind of diffuses. So there shouldn't be, as I've mentioned before, a lot of harsh lines, if at all possible. I do find that the edges of the facets is where the most concentrated color is. So our next red is actually my smallest one, 217. And 217 is the middle cadmium red. Now I'm going to go to the bottom and I'm going to fade up. Again, no harsh lines if possible. You can also bring in a little bit of this at the top. And then this is the darkest red, and if you don't want to have 4 colors of red, then that's fine, but this is just kind of the finishing touch, and I just go over the very bottom just lightly, just to make sure that that is a deep red on the bottom. Now this is the lightest red again, my pale geranium lake. And I'm just blending all this together. Now if you wanted to have more of just a light center and you didn't want to have any like glowing yellow in there, then don't add yellow. You could try adding a bit of white. And in fact, we'll add a bit of white here and you'll see the difference between a yellow and a white. So this is my Derwent Chinese white, which is quite opaque. So I'm just going to put down a layer of that and then I'm going to blend right over top of it. So I'm not trying to make it a milky color. Just trying to keep the center area a little bit lighter. Now we're going to come back with our deep red. And I'm skipping the center area with, I'm only keeping the lightest red in that center area. So I will go over everywhere else with other colors, but not in the center. Our deepest red, just to kind of clean that up. When you're happy and you don't see any white of your paper, or if that is not something that bothers you, that's totally fine. At this point, you can just leave it. You could also take a blending pencil similar to this, and so if you didn't want to keep adding more layers of pigment, you could bring in a blending pencil. When you're blending though, when you want to keep the areas distinctly different though, don't go like this and drag the dark colors into the light. So blend each color kind of separately, and you may need to also wipe off your blending pencil when you're done. So that is how the make sure you have enough light there. This is how the using just the light red or a little bit of white in the center versus using some yellow here. So it kind of just goes for what you're going for on that ruby, but this is definitely looking just more red, and this has a bit of the orange tinge to it. Okay, let's move on to this large faceted area, and let's have some light source coming from I'll show you the other page again. What I did with this one for the light source was I had the light coming down and diffusing, so almost created a bit of a star pattern in there, and I did that just with focusing the colors and coming up to more like a triangle. So that is how that worked. So picking your light source is important, but that's just if you want to kind of change the way each stone is looking on a page as well. So let's select that the light is going to hit this area up here. So we're going to make sure that this area up here is lighter, and then it'll get darker as we come down. So this is my pale geranium lake. And at this point, I'm actually going to just put in a little bit of white here. Just kind of burnish that in a bit. Okay, and this is deep red, which is our next color. And I'm going to come around all the way . Now if the light is hit here, it's going to bounce out, so we can also have like a bit of a lighter area over here as well. So it doesn't have to be just in one spot. But for ease of this learning, that's what we're going to do. But I am going to reserve a little bit area over here. It's going to be lighter too. So this area right here, just darken that up so you can see. So that's going to be a lighter spot, and this is a lighter spot here. Our next one, our tiny one, 217. And because this is a larger stone on top, it's going to have more surface area. So we are going to bring up the darker color further onto the stone than we did down below here, because where they were quite narrow. We do have a lot more surface area that we can actually bring this. I'm going to grab a pencil extender. One moment. Okay, we're back. You won't have to watch me clamp down on such a tiny pencil. So if you only wanted to use 3 reds, this would be the darkest red. And I'm not going to bring the darkest red into the center. I'm always going to have it on the edge. And because this is where the highlight is, I'm not going to bring it down as far as I will on the sides and the bottom. Okay, I'm going to go back to my middle red, which is deep red. And I'm going to start filling in some of this white of the paper. I'm going to go all the way and marry the two together, the dark red and the light red. Just blending out this area where my 2 highlights are going to be. So I make sure that they stay light. And I'm going to come in with the lightest red, and go over the whole stone. Taking our last red, which is our dark red 225, I'm going to come along and just deepen up the very edges. Now you can do your whole gem and then do this at the very end, but I'm doing it as we go so that you're kind of getting an idea without having to see the full gemstone done, in case you want to fast forward and skip ahead. So there's quite a bit of still white of the paper showing, and that's because this is such a large area. So what we're going to do is I'm going to bring in my Caran d'Ache full blender, and I'm just going to do a bit of blending with that. And I'm not pushing down super hard, but I am pushing down hard enough to blend. So I'm not squashing the total tooth of the paper. I will be able to add more layers after this, but not too terribly many. Now we're going to add a little bit of yellow to this one down here, so that you can see for yourself which you prefer, whether or not you want a little bit of glowing with the yellow, or if you want more of a light coming from the white that we put there. And if I had a lighter, brighter red, I could have used that as well. So this is again the darkest red, just to give the edges some definition. And just blending that edge in. So that's how, if light is hitting it, it's going to shine outwards. So this will shine this way, this could shine that way. It's a gemstone, so you can make it shine however you like. If you want to then go in and do some clear stardust, kind of thinking this jelly roll, clear stardust, which just adds a little bit of sparkle. You could certainly do that. And I'm just going to work a little bit more on this gemstone and do another area, and then we will transfer our skills to our coloring book. And I'll just keep the music on as we do our next one. Okay, just wanted to point out for this one I didn't use white or yellow. I just left the lightest red in the center and then did a little bit of blending with the my Caran d'Ache blender. So if you're not somebody who wants to use another color, introduce another color on your page to get the highlight, you can still do that with just the color itself. Okay, let's transfer our skills to our book, Grains of Gold. Okay, quick recap before we go into the Grains of Gold book. This is the ruby that we are doing. I used these colors here, and I pointed out that these two areas I used the dark cadmium yellow for a highlight. In this one I used the Chinese white for a highlight. So if you want to take a screenshot of this page picture here for your future reference, by all means. And now we'll go to the Grains of Gold. Here is the book Grains of Gold by Hanna Karlzon. This is her compilation book, and I have been using it mainly for this gem series. So every month we've kind of been poking in this book and getting a few pages done. So just to remind you that of the garnet we did earlier in this series, just on the other side of this page. So there's our garnet. And on the opposite page, we are going to do the ruby. And I'm going to do this one down here because it's going to be a little bit more complex. And while we're going through that, we will go over some interesting information and facts about rubies and where they come from. So let's get started. First off, ruby is a symbol of love, passion, protection, and prosperity. It is the birthstone for July. If you're lucky enough to have a birthday in July, comment below if you own and wear any rubies. I'm always interested to know if people who have a birthday in these months actually have any of the birthstones themselves. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to be using the same colors I used before. But because this has more facets, I'm going to actually bring up a couple of other pictures for you on screen so that you can see some of the different colors that you can get from rubies. So I'm going to have the light coming from top down, so it's going to be darker along the bottom. So let's start with a bottom one. So ruby is actually one of the very valuable gemstones, and there are some famous rubies out there. And I will put on screen a picture of one of the tiaras that Queen Elizabeth and now Queen Camilla from England wears, and it has a Burmese ruby in it, and quite a few rubies. So as I mentioned, ruby is a practical stone with a hardness of 9, so it wears really well in rings and tiaras, necklaces, with it being a hard stone, not quite as hard as a diamond, but almost. So it's a very good hardy stone that you can wear. Which is nice, because some stones are beautiful, but you have to treat them with kid gloves, so to speak. So because this is a different facet, I am having some darker along the bottom, and so this here is going to be darker, and then this area is lighter. And then I'm actually going to bring in just a little bit of yellow and put it in the center right there. and at the tip right here. So this one's going to have a bit of a glowing effect. And then I'm going to go darker along the top and then along the bottom. And then I'm going to jump right to my lightest color. And blend it in to the darker color. So we'll keep doing that. Pretty much always darkest along the facet line, and then lighter in the centers or along one tip. So you can find a ruby in lots of countries. The most kind of famous one though is, or well known, maybe not famous, but most well known would be ones from Myanmar, or what is formerly known as Burma. So, but rubies can be also mined in Thailand, Tanzania, so Africa, Brazil, Cambodia, and Australia. So there's lots of places to find them. They are a natural stone. Rubies are always red. And the ruby is a very high priced gemstone, so it's quite valuable. Out of all the gemstones, ruby is one of the most valued in that and that cost is reflected. Okay, having sharp pencils is key for having a good blend in these small areas. Now we're getting closer to the tip of this, so I'm going to have this area darker. And then this area lighter. I'm going to bring in just a little bit of yellow here. So I want this ruby to kind of have a bit of a glow. So a ruby can be a fluorescent gemstone, and that's due to so they kind of can glow from within, so they're a little bit fluorescent, and that's due to the chromium in them. So that's also why I'm trying to make it do a little bit of a glow. Now this is underneath, so I'm just going to do him very dark and leave it at that. And I'll do this other side as well, because there won't be a lot of light hitting back here. And that gives us a chance to make sure people know that it's a ruby. And then our second darkest red. It's hard to know where all these little tangles are. And then we're going to get progressively lighter. So put my lightest red at the edge here, and then with the next red. So just depending on how the light would be hitting the stone, I anticipate there'll be a little bit more light here and less light further up. And then we will continue on this area here, but let's finish up these two areas and then we can do this one, and then I'll leave you and do this on my own and come back to show you the final result. This is my lightest. Back to my lightest to blend out. And my darkest. You don't need a heavy line. So my middle color. And then my lightest. I'm still hardly any pressure. And then I'm going to bring in a little bit of the yellow just in the center. And then come back in. This is my lightest color again. Just blending everything out, making sure there's no white spots. I like to blend with my lightest color, and because you can always go darker, but it's kind of hard to go lighter. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. This is my lightest color, just making sure before I get underway. I want light to be up here. So this is my middle dark, so this is deep red. And then I'm going to go to the 217. And this is the deepest red, which is dark red 225, and it's just going to go on the very edge. And not all the edges, just the bottom ones. And with my middle red, and our lightest red, and a little bit of yellow. Again, if you'd rather use white or just another stick with the light red, that's totally fine. I just want to keep some areas a little bit bright. And if you have enough layers and you're happy and you don't see any white of the paper, you don't need to burnish with the blender pencil. So that's totally an option, and it just depends how your hand is doing. If you want to just take a break and come back and do more layers or not. But okay, so this time I'm going to do the whole and I'm going to put the yellow down first because I'm going to come in with the dark, and this is such a small facet that it's going to get covered up quickly. So it is buffing everything out. Okay, that's how the ruby is going to look. So each facet you start over and you decide where you want some darker. So we had quite a bit of darkness down here, so maybe up here I'll have more dark and a little bit lighter right here, or we could do the opposite. It's totally up to you, but I probably would do these similar and then I probably would reverse that. So let's do that one together, and then I'll go off and do a bunch more on my own. And my lightest this time is going to be on the bottom. Okay, I'll continue on and I'll bring you back once I have this stone done. Okay, here is the completed gemstone. I haven't decided whether or not I will do some lines on top of it with the clear stardust or not. So let's try it first on our practice page before we go and do it on our, in fact, let's grab our other book and let's see how it looks before we go ahead and commit it to. So this is the Jelly Roll Clear, and all it will do is add a little bit of shine on top of the facets. So that's what I was thinking of doing. Just add a little bit of shine to it. So let's try it on this one. And we'll wait for that to dry. And then we can decide whether or not we like that added bit. I don't want to take a black glaze pen. See if I have a red glaze. This is a red glaze, so we could also try that here and see how that looks. Okay, we'll let that dry and we'll see how each one looks on its own and whether or not we want to add that to our page. Okay, it's had a little bit of a chance to dry. The red doesn't really add much to the black, to the line, but this does add quite a bit when I move the page. So I think I am going to go ahead and do the clear Stardust Jelly Roll on the lines here, just to give them a little bit of glitz, because we do want this to kind of show that it's a gemstone and it's shiny. So I'm just going to go right over top of the existing faceted lines. So you'll still see the lines, so we're not kind of getting rid of them. It'll just add a little bit of shine to it when we move the page. Okay. I'll continue doing this, and I'll bring you back once it's had a chance to dry, and you can check it out. Okay, here's a last look at our page from Grains of Gold. Here is how the ruby has turned out. I did use a red glaze to do the smaller dots all over the page, as well as outline this top ruby itself. I then did color the top ruby similar to the larger one that we did together, and this is how the ruby has turned out. I did not use any of the clear Stardust gel on the top ruby, but I did cover the black lines on the bottom one, so hopefully you can see some of that there. Try and move the light to catch some of it. I think that you will be able to see it when you move it around, but it's not kind of a glaring. I do like how it turned out. I like how it is kind of glowing. It's definitely a ruby, and I'm pleased with how it looks. I hope you had fun and learned a little bit along with me. I'm learning how to do these gems just like you, and I am enjoying learning more about the gems themselves. If you're a ruby baby, make sure to comment below if you have a ruby and if you love it. I hope you are having a creative and colorful week, and I will see you soon in the next video. All right, take care everybody. Bye-bye.